Rebecca's now aged 17, but take us back to when she was younger and was in line for the HPV vaccination.
Well, like many parents, and we received information from the school, from the HSE via the school, with respect to this new vaccination that was supposed to prevent cervical cancer. We looked at this. We had very little time to actually do any research because we were asked to sort of fill in the form and send it back within 3 days. So we filled it in good faith because my father died of cancer, so cancer was very much in my mind. So filled it in, and off she went, and she had the first injection in October 13, the second in November 13, and then the third in the spring of 14.
Go ahead.
And I mean, immediately she started getting sick, and I can remember certainly in March of 14, we were concerned that she'd be unable to get the third dose because of the illnesses she had. At the time, we had not the full information on the vaccine. We didn't have the patient information leaflet, so we didn't know that some of the illnesses or some of the symptoms she was displaying were actually listed in that PIL, and we were not supposed to get any further vaccinations.
So how soon, I mean, before the vaccination the first vaccination, Rebecca, was she generally healthy?
Oh, yes. I mean, she and her friends would basically, I'm sure you're aware of the phenomenon, jump into lakes for fun. And, I mean, down in County Leitrim, we have the River Shannon. They would jump off the pier and all this kind of stuff. She played tag rugby. She was a perfectly healthy, sort of bouncy girl coming up towards her teenage years.
And then how soon after the vaccination did she start becoming ill?
Well, it's an interesting one. When the illnesses sort of got worse and worse and worse, and certainly after the third vaccination, they just got much worse, and her attendance at school started declining. She wasn't able to get out of bed. She couldn't remember. Her short-term memory was going. But, I mean, when we were looking at this, we went back and we actually found a receipt for Peraton from the weekend after the first vaccination. So we actually found that, you know, she was suffering a reaction, and she'd had asthma before, so we just thought it was the asthma. And then, but as time went on, she got worse and worse and worse, and we started going to specialists, so immunologists, neurologists, any gists that you fancy.
Were you making a link at this point yourself between Rebecca's health and the vaccinations?
Nope, not at all. That came as a sort of revelation sometime later when my wife walked into my office, because I work from home here, and said to me, okay, have a look at this, and she showed me the list of symptoms that Rebecca had written out over the months to go to each of these specialists, and then have a look at this, and she showed me the Merck patient information leaflet, and there they all were. I mean, it was a real moment, and it was a complete relief to actually find what was going on. But unfortunately, that was just the start of our problems.
Then what happened?
Sorry?
Then what happened?
Well, I mean, we were then in touch with a parent group called Regret, who I'm sure you're aware of, who were able to sort of say, okay, you're not the only one, for a start. There were at the time over 100. There's now over 400 in Regret. That was a relief, and then they started sharing information about, well, this is a specialist that some of our girls have seen. Go and have a look. I mean, and I rang up, and within a week we were seeing the specialist. The specialist did some bloods in Ireland, some specialist bloods in Ireland, and bang, we had a real diagnosis of what exactly was wrong with Rebecca.
And how is she now?
I mean, now is a relative term. She has good days and bad days, okay. But I mean, to be clear with you, a good day is when she can go out for a few hours and then come back and not crash for 3 weeks. Now,
she's 17, so yeah. This is the prime of her teenage years, and she had the first vaccination when she was 13. So what impact then has it had on her life, her teenage years, which, you know, obviously the big years for boys and girls?
Well, she hasn't had any.
Yeah.
She hasn't had any life. She hasn't She's lost contact with most of her friends, and the friends that she is in contact with don't really know how to talk to her. She has, the normal anxieties and mood swings of a teenage girl, but amplified 1,000 times by the pure frustration that she feels about simply not being able to get up and do things.
Yeah, I can imagine. So when you talk about the diagnoses, has anyone made a formal link to you between the vaccination and Rebecca's condition?
We have 3 GPs and a total, I think, of 4 specialists that have talked to us, and all of them, at worst, say the vaccination could be a trigger, and one actually said the vaccination is the direct cause. All of them recognise the fact, certainly her GP recognises the fact that before she was healthy and now she's sick. You hear, okay, the temporal association, the time association doesn't mean causation. But, if you remember your days in school in science, the thing that you did was you tried something out. You then looked at what happened next and you wrote it down, and that was your science experiment. So when you've got one girl, okay, before she was healthy and now she's not, okay, it could be a coincidence. But when you have hundreds, and then you have thousands across Europe, and then you have tens of thousands across the world, then the word coincidence starts becoming a little bit of a pejorative term.
What level what level of acceptance or sympathy have you had from, I don't know, the likes of the HSE or other responsible parties? And when I say responsible, I mean those not for the condition directly. I can't draw that conclusion, but those responsible for administering the vaccine and getting the information out there and ensuring that no one has adverse reactions as much as is possible.
Well, the direct answer to your question is 0. But the only thing that's regrets and we have ever asked for is an investigation into the girls, and then the product information leaflet being distributed along with the consent form. That's the only 2 things. Now, it's not, although the jury's out, we're not saying that the vaccine itself shouldn't be administered. We're simply saying when you administer this vaccine and you have a casualty rate, you should actually recognise that they are casualties and treat them accordingly. What
do you believe the motivation for not doing so is then, if to your claim there?
Now you're asking me to speculate, but...
Well, you don't have to if you don't want to. People perhaps can draw their own conclusions.
Let's a couple of facts, maybe. The first fact would be that the health minister is currently very keen on getting the EMA, who are the European regulators, to come and relocate to Dublin once they leave the UK. The second fact is the thousands of people and the billions of euros worth of GDP invested in Merck and the pharmaceuticals within Ireland. There are 2 facts. Now, you can draw your own conclusions, you can make your own links, but, there are 2 facts. The third is also, it is interesting to note that when you look at the information, the product information leaflet that Merck do, they list all the symptoms. Indeed, in the latest version of the vaccination Gardasil 9, they say that here are a list of reactions that have been suffered from Gardasil. They may also be suffered from Gardasil 9. So Merck are saying, here are a list of reactions. And in the Gardasil 9 package insert, which carries more data, they actually say 2.3% suffered severe adverse reactions. Or severe adverse events to Gardasil, and this is improved to only 2.3%. Now, when you're looking at what Regret are saying, they're saying 400 people out of 200,000, which is 0.2%, which is 10 times less than what Merck are saying in their information. So the question is, why?
Okay. Stay with us. I will come back to you, but I want to talk now to Donal Buggy, who's Head of Services and Advocacy at the Irish Cancer Society. Donal, you've been listening to Peter there and the plight of his daughter Rebecca and all the family, I'm sure, affected very much by it. Are any concerns that Peter's expressed there that you would share, Donal?
Well, obviously, I can't talk in relation to Rebecca and Peter's daughter. That I've no association or information in relation to that case. But I suppose what I can say is that, the Irish Cancer Society is in the business of saving lives and trying to help people affected by cancer. And when we look at the evidence, and we support this vaccine, and when we look at the evidence in relation to the reported side effects, it doesn't follow through in terms of the science and the rigor of the science. But it is incontrovertible that this vaccine is saving lives. We see from Australia, where the vaccine has been in place for many years now, that the rate of infection, HPV infection of girls, of young women, has significantly reduced from about a third down to about 4%. And this is going to have a follow-on impact that will ensure that fewer women get cervical cancer in their later lives. And I suppose our concern in the Irish Cancer Society is that the uptake of the vaccine has dropped from 90% to below 50%. And we know that based on the numbers that there are girls who are starting secondary school this year who will die from cervical cancer, up to 40, should that rate stay the same. So we are, as what rings true in terms of what Peter is saying, is that it is important to provide information and good quality information and early information in relation to any medicine that you take and any vaccine that you take. And we would be asking people to go on to websites like hpv.ie, or indeed to call and speak to an Irish Cancer Society nurse on 1-800-200-700 should people have any concerns.
Might I suggest, though, Donald, that if this was properly investigated and maybe some answers were given on a more formal level, that the uptake may be higher. But with uncertainty, with real stories like Rebecca and hundreds of other girls, when they're out there and people perhaps feel they can't get proper answers, well, then they're going to say, well, I'm not going to risk it then. So it's another perhaps example that the whole case, the whole situation is not being treated or is not being handled correctly.
Yeah, it is a communications issue, absolutely, and I think certainly the HSE would acknowledge that they didn't take on enough of the communications challenge when the vaccine was first introduced. That it was the rate went up very quickly to almost 90%, and they, I suppose, took their eye off the ball in some respects in terms of ensuring that good information was available early to parents and girls who are making the decision.
So, Donald, from your perspective, if more people are taking it up, and you want as many people to take it up as possible because it saves lives, what is your view, or what is your message to the likes of Peter and Rebecca, who and hundreds of others who are having negative effects from this vaccine, or at least it's claimed? I'm not sure if you accept it.
Yeah, I think they're reported negative effects. I suppose what I would say is I would look at the research that has been done in relation to this vaccine, and it's one of the most researched vaccines in history, and take the advice from the World Health Organization, from the European Medicines Agency, the US Centre for Disease Control. There was a study that came out.
Yeah, but we can't sort of say. I mean, is it fair to say? And this sounds so clunky, and I don't mean it. Yes, it's saving lots of lives. We would need 100% uptake. Please do. But okay, there are some people who are having their teenage years ruined as a result of this. It's not. I don't think that's satisfactory, to be honest with you, Donald.
And neither do I. But what I would say is that autoimmune diseases, neurological diseases, and conditions occurred in girls before we had a vaccine. It occurred in girls and boys before we had a vaccine. So there is the correlation that has been claimed isn't based on any evidence or any science.
But who then who's going to then examine these cases, investigate these cases? Like, we can't just say, well, there's no proof if no one's looking for the proof.
Well, we can look. One of the things that we don't have in Ireland, I guess, is very good electronic health records. But one country that does is Scotland, and they have a unique patient identifier, and they looked at the girls who have been vaccinated and the girls who haven't been vaccinated, because they can do that with their electronic system, and it showed that there was no difference in the amount or the proportion of autoimmune and neurological conditions in the unvaccinated group versus the vaccinated group. So we would expect in any population of about 0.2%, between 0.2 and 0.4% of autoimmune conditions. So in the group of the 200,000 girls who have been vaccinated so far, you would expect mild, moderate, severe between 400 and 800 cases. And that happened before the vaccine, and that happened after the vaccine.
I would say, Donald, with respect, listening to your answer, and if I had a daughter, I wouldn't be... You're not telling me anything that would encourage me to take up the vaccine. You know, if I was sceptical about it, if I was hearing Peter and Rebecca's story and then listened to your response to it, it sort of quoting statistics from Scotland or something, it wouldn't necessarily, I mean it with respect, but it wouldn't encourage me to it wouldn't change my mind about taking the vaccine.
Well, all we can do, and a group of organisations has come together this week, the Children's Rights Alliance, National Women's Council of Ireland, a lot of health organisations, to try and help parents and help girls make that decision. So if they are hesitant, to try and support them get access to the best information that is out there, so that when they are making the decision, they are making it from a fact-based, that they have all the facts available to them. And I suppose all we can do is quote the science, which shows that that in girls who are vaccinated and girls who are unvaccinated, there are autoimmune diseases, and there isn't an increase in vaccinated girls versus unvaccinated girls. We have to be, the Irish Cancer Society, we base the information that we provide on science and on rigorous science, and that's all we can do.
Okay, now there's some talk online that maybe there's vested interest and all this type of stuff, so I might ask the question so it become clear that it's not the case, but the company responsible for this particular drug wouldn't financially support the Irish Cancer Society, for instance?
We do get some funding from them to support one of our patient services, but what we're doing, we have no interest.
Is it a lot of money, Donald?
It would be less than 1% of the overall income of the Irish Cancer Society.
Okay.
So we would have corporate donors that would support the Irish Cancer Society for about 10% of the overall income that the Irish Cancer Society would have, and they would be to support the patient services that we deliver.
And that doesn't in any way leave you in an awkward position in criticising one of those companies?
No, absolutely not. Okay. And we have done in the past, and we will do in the future. What we are doing is supporting what is public policy and government policy in relation to HPV vaccination.
Okay. Donald Buggy?
There are a number of vaccines which are available from different companies, so we have no interest in promoting one company over another company.
Donald Buggy, Head of Services and Advocacy with the Irish Cancer Society, thank you very much. Briefly, back to you, Peter. Peter Hollidge, we're talking about your daughter Rebecca. Do you want to just perhaps give a reaction to what Donald's got to say there? I presume you've heard it before.
Absolutely, yes, I want to give a reaction. I'll just try and calm myself down first. Listen, he talks about scientific evidence. They all point back to an EMA study which said, here's a list of symptoms. There are no increases in the symptoms. Now, I don't want to get too complicated, but there was another study that says, okay, these girls aren't suffering from one symptom. They're suffering from a cluster of symptoms. And they compared worldwide data on unvaccinated girls and vaccinated girls, and they could not find unvaccinated girls with the same cluster of symptoms. Okay? That's point number one. Point number two, less than 1% of his budget could be, and I know for a fact that Merck has donated $100,000 per year for the last 2 years to the Irish Cancer Society. And my wife was in a meeting where the Irish Cancer Society said they received no funding from it. And also the Irish Cancer Society, I mean, the gentleman you just had has probably been the least unreasonable in his language, but they have branded our daughters fake news. They have branded our daughters. I mean, my own daughter Rebecca is known by these people on social media as that girl in the wheelchair because she had the courage to stand up to one of the designers of the vaccination. I mean, she has that much Donegal in her. So, I mean, when you're looking at this, I mean, we the first set of bloods we had, and, okay, what he was talking about autoimmune diseases, autoimmune is a broad spectrum, okay? My daughter suffers from a specific illness caused by a specific or cluster of infections. It is not the autoimmune element is one of the results of that infection. So, I mean, this is, if you like, pushing phrases out there to try and cover the fact that these girls are a cluster of girls who, before they were vaccinated, were fine, and after they're vaccinated, were not. And I don't know the unvaccinated population in terms of autoimmune disease.
I don't know what it's going to take for you to get movement on this, Peter, but it certainly doesn't sound like you're very close to it, you know, so some level of expectance or even an investigation, because there, as you heard, the quoting science from Scotland there.
Yeah, it's not science, it's statistical analysis.
Sure, good clarification, yeah.
I mean, if you look at the science that Merck did, they say 2.5% will have had serious adverse events with respect to Gardasil 1. In the Gardasil 9 PIL, they say people have suffered these side effects after Gardasil, and these side effects may occur again after Gardasil 9 because it's a similar drug. Mm-hmm. They will not say that if they didn't actually believe that to be true.
Okay. Well, Peter, we have to move on. I hope Rebecca improves.
So do we. This is what we're working for. This has been the centre of our family for the last 2 years.
Mm-hmm. Indeed, I can imagine. Peter, thank you, and pass on our best wishes, please.
I will do. Thank you very much.
Okay, Peter Hollidge there.